This portion is called Terumah, which means gift, contribution, or offering. It begins in chapter 25, verse 1 and concludes 27, verse 19. The subject is the tabernacle. And God is instructing Moses to ask the Israelites to bring offerings for its construction, but only those, quote, whose heart moves them to give, unquote. That's 25, verse 2. Now think about this situation. God has just recently performed amazing miracles, especially the dividing of a sea so deep that it stood up like a wall on either side, and the Israelites walked through on dry land to the other side. And he then closed it in behind them, destroying their enemies who were coming to slaughter or re-enslave them. That's another miracle, 2 miracles there. This God has power. He has all power. The greatest nation in the world at that time, Egypt, is powerless before him. The deep sea is a mere dish of water or just held in the palm of his hand. And here he is asking for a gift. Power alone sets the God of Israel way beyond all the false gods of this world. And now we see that this all-powerful God is also humble. This was unknown among the pantheon of false gods in the ancient world. Their gods were proud and vindictive. This God is not only all-powerful, he is humble. And is also kind, loving, and faithful. He is humble because he loves us. He loves the Jews, as we'll see in this story in a minute. Now here's the question. Since all the world belongs to him, he made it all, why did he ask the Jews for donations for the making of the tabernacle? He made the universe. Couldn't he make a tent and its articles? Well, the answer is, of course, yes. In fact, it's taught that the making of the menorah, the lampstand, from one solid piece of gold was the one article that was beyond the ability of the craftsman. And so God had to construct that himself, which kind of proves that he could have done it all himself, which of course he could. But the question remains, why did God ask the Jews for donations? And it was important that they were free will offerings. They weren't obligated to do so. Well, giving has interesting effects. Jesus said it's more blessed to give than to receive. Acts 20, verse 35. Well, one of the blessings is that it strengthens the link between the giver and the receiver. The giver invests some of his life into the other and finds himself caring even more about them. Giving also dignifies the giver. We are elevated when we give to another, whether it's time, energy, or something material. So there are 2 blessings to begin with. Stronger ties, which means an increase of love and less of self, and a greater sense of self-worth leading to dignity. Also, because we wouldn't have anything to give unless God first supplied it, we become conduits of his goodness, a river flowing through us. And that's another blessing. You see, this is all blessing. So when God requests donations from the Israelites, he is giving them the priceless opportunity to strengthen their connection to him, to invest, so to speak, in God himself. There is also a more subtle reason. Having delivered them by supernatural miracles from the hand of Pharaoh, miraculously supplied them a daily food from heaven and water in the desert, the people are in danger of continuing with the slave mentality, that of subservience, constantly being receivers but never givers, with no initiative or get up and go. So to remedy this, God asks for a gift, but only if they choose to do so. They must exercise their free will, probably something they hadn't exercised for many years, maybe for the whole 6 or 7 generations when they were enslaved. You see, the redemption that God brings is complete. It's physical, mental, and spiritual. It's full redemption. He wants the people to grow up, so to speak. They're his children, and he wants them to mature. And finally, let's bear in mind that being a recipient of gifts can actually be humbling. God, in his infinite wisdom, tender loving care and humility, is redeeming his people and is prepared to humble himself in order to achieve it. Well, we shouldn't be surprised. Didn't his own son once ask a drink of water from a Samaritan? With the result that she and her whole village were saved, all because of God's humility. The overall message then is that we become channels of God's generous grace. This is obvious when it means that we are giving, but the aspect of grace that God reveals to us in this narrative and that Jesus practiced is that of humility. In other words, we also need to learn to receive gifts, and that can be humbling. Others like to give and to help, and then it's our position to accept their generosity gladly. Independence can become pride, and pride isolates by building walls. Here at Sinai and at the well in Samaria, God humbled himself, and life was the result. Giving is sometimes receiving, and receiving amounts to giving. It's a blessed exchange. Channels of God's generous grace. That's what this world needs, and that amounts to a remarkable opportunity for all believers. God could settle this whole mess in this world in a nanosecond, but he wants to give opportunity to all those whose heart moves them to give, as it was said in our quote from this portion. Does your heart move you to give? I imagine it does. How then can we give? Let's go through a few ideas. We can praise and worship him more than we've ever done before, both publicly and privately. In fact, my best times of worship have been on my own at home, and at the risk of sounding cranky or conceited, God has given me deep assurance that what I am doing in prayer and praise is making a substantial impact in certain areas, and he encourages me enormously. One thing I always do, by the way, is to enter into his presence with a smile on my face. He likes to see us enter into his presence gladly, and I conclude with dancing. So the smile and the dance are bookends of joy. It's a little offering that I give him, and he smiles with me. You see, it's all bringing more of Jesus into this world, and how this world needs more of Jesus. We can commit some scriptures to heart. We then widen the channel between heaven and earth, and we are the landing place. More Jesus in this world. We can give financially to a local charity or church, or to Israel in its time of trouble. But how about receiving more, as we've been saying? Think of it like this, and I mean this with the greatest respect. God leaves home every day with a bag full of gifts. They are blessings, words or gifts of encouragement, words or gifts of guidance, assurances of love, pledges of his faithfulness, his strength, joy, forgiveness, healing, and rebuking. Yes, that also is a gift and a blessing. He only rebukes those whom he loves. But at the end of every day, he returns home with the bag still heavy with unreceived gifts. He has what we need in that bag. Let us bless God by receiving one or two of those gifts that he would love to give us. He won't force us. As with the Jews and the gifts for the tabernacle, it must only be those, quote, whose heart moves them to receive.